We'll call the meeting to order. And our first item on the agenda is to review the CM score sheets. I'd just like to start off with a comment about the three companies that we are reviewing for the CM selection. I thought all three made a great presentation. I liked the part where I think it was Bond, where they offered to present a classroom lesson to the students to explain what was going on in the school and to go over the renovation. I thought that was a pretty neat idea. I also liked on the Colantino side that they had the trailers, no, the modules for the K through the kindergarten group to keep them safe and out of the way and not have them in constant motion. I thought that was a very good, safe idea, although I didn't care for the cost of the modules. But I did go through the all the scoring on the sheets, and it was very hard to do. I think it was very difficult in some areas that it was hard to judge between the three companies, but we had to make some choices. I don't know whether you want to start with my numbers or...
So, I think what we're going to do, and I have given you each a one-page memo that will get attached to the decision that summarizes this approach, which is that we're going to follow the approach that the designer selection panel follows in terms of this discussion. So the designer selection panel, which is the process we went through to select Doran Whittier. What we'll do is we'll go around the group and talk about each of the CMs one at a time. So we'll do them in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with Bond, then do Colantonio, then do W.T. Rich. So we're going to get each of you to sort of comment on what you think are the pros and cons of the collected application, which is the price proposal, the technical proposal, which included information about how they would approach the project, and the interview. So interview, price proposal, and the RFP itself, the SOP. So, and then once we've done that for all three of them, I'm going to ask you each to rank the firms. Now, you each have sort of detailed scoring sheets to kind of help you get to the ranking. Then we'll record the rankings on this sheet. We'll go around and I'll call each of your names, we'll record them. And the firm that has the most number one rankings would be the selected firm. So that hopefully will allow us to do this in a relatively organized fashion. Does anybody have any comments about that before we start? We got everybody here who's voting? I'm not voting, so Andrea is voting for Pink and Company, Brad is voting for Doran Whittier, and we've got Joe, Dennis, Larry, Christine, and Michelle. So there's 7 votes altogether. I do agree with Joe that I think the town and us as consultants would be very lucky to have all 3 of these firms, and so the decision here is finding the ways that these firms are differentiated and selecting the best out of the 3 is not going to be an easy task. So if that sounds okay, then I think what I'd like to suggest as we get started, I'm going to take some notes as you talk. And what I'd like to do is just go around the table. Actually, maybe, Joe, we'll start with you as the chair of the building committee, and then Brad can be the last. And just, we'd all like to hear your thoughts about Bond first.
Okay, just before you do that, is there a chance of maybe getting each person's point score
Yeah.
as well as their rankings, because we can have 4 people that vote for one person, okay, as number 1, but maybe the difference between them and number 2 might be like the, popular vote versus electoral vote. Some person, this number 2 could have a lot more points, but for some reason be ranked second.
Yep. Like I have one company at 58 and then another company at 56. Very
Right.
close.
I think the dilemma with that is that each person has their own
Yeah.
kind of internal metric for how they're scoring. So I think it becomes difficult to compare one person's scoring to the next. The intent of the scoring sheet was to give you a way to sort of arrive at your own ranking. We will collect that information, and I do think that if there isn't a kind of clear outcome here, we could refer to it, but I don't think that's where I would start.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yep.
But because of time constraints, I think we should try to move things in somewhat expeditiously, because
We have another meeting at 7.
we do,
Okay,
and we're gonna speed that one up too.
all right,
I'm telling you right now. Okay, let me start off with Bond.
okay.
I'll start off with just a few general comments. Again, as I said, I like the way one of the guys made the presentation that he was going to do a lesson, offered to do a lesson in the classroom. I did find them to be a very big company that was kind of overwhelming, and I thought I didn't care for that much as far as that part of the presentation went. Laurie?
As far as Bond is concerned, I thought that they were a nice, large company, which has some advantages. I liked that they had the BIM approach, or computer-aided design manufacture. Very much a plus when you're trying to integrate the HVAC, the new plumbing, new wiring, fire suppression, everything else, to be able to attack that without, we'll say, just sticking your head up out of one of the ceiling tiles and looking around and saying, well, I think it will fit, type of a thing. So I thought that was very much a plus in their favor. The size was a little bit of a concern to me. That's my feeling.
Yeah, my review of Bond as well is, they're a big outfit. I think any one of these 3 companies could very well do a great job for us here. It was kind of hard to separate 2 of the 3, because I think 2 of them are close and one is not as close as the others. I felt Bond was a little weak on their presentation to the committee at their last meeting. Their answers to the questions were not as well as I thought they should be. A lot of their work, basically they said that the mechanical systems are their excellent projects, and that's always a good sign, because I know that's something that we're going to be looking for here. I do like, as Larry said, the idea of using the BIM process and using that here. I get a little nervous sometimes, as I think I said to Margaret this afternoon, that you document everything, and sometimes I saw that they had some litigation with some companies that didn't perform as well, and I'm not sure that sometimes too much is not as good as not as much. But I did like the approach. I think that was the only one that had that. I like their aggressive phase 1 schedule and the phasing. Phase 4 was a good plan with the small they left the small square feet to renovate at the end, where one of the other proposers had proposed to put 40,000 square feet at their last phase, which I think is way too much. If something should happen in the beginning phase, which is really the critical phase, it's going to bump everything back. And in this case here, they had most of their stuff evenly spaced all the way through. So if there is a snag in getting a long lead item, that I think they can put it through the phasing in their different phases. The one thing that was a little drawback was of the completed projects that they listed, 24 projects that they listed, none of them were really schools. They were mostly elementary schools or municipal schools. A lot of them were colleges and things of that nature. They definitely have the biggest bonding capacity, and you know, I rank them very high. So I mean, that's pretty much the high points on bond. So I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Are we not, is this all about non-price right now, or are we talking about price and non-price? Because no one's mentioned anything about price thus far.
I think we should talk about both.
Okay.
Okay, because
I mean, if you have comments on it, I think, as I emailed earlier today, I think the price proposal piece is complicated to make a comparison. So I am comfortable with you all making comments as we go, when it gets around to this end of the table. Andrea and I can summarize the way Pinky Company looks at the scoring. But other people may have different perspectives. That's our perspective. We'll provide our perspective. So if other people have thoughts about the pricing, I would encourage you to speak up about it.
yeah, on the pricing, I noticed that bond, their fixed costs are probably in the middle of the other two companies. So, and there isn't too much significant difference in that sense. I think once you get into the construction phase and things like that, then it starts to blossom out a little bit more. So,
Larry or Joe, do you want to add anything about the price proposal to your comment?
Larry?
Nothing significant. I'll pass.
Michelle?
Just to reiterate, actually, a lot of what has been said, I viewed Bond as a large organization, almost maybe a little bit too large for what we need or what we want, or in my opinion. I thought they were very professional, but I didn't think their presentation was thorough enough. I did like the visual camera system, you know, as none of the other firms mentioned that. And I did like the education of the students, involving the students, their safety plan. That's pretty much, yeah, across the board. They all address the safety. I really didn't have any comments on the price, in particular for Bond.
Want me to go?
Christie?
Okay. So very similar to what Michelle said, I did feel that they were too big of a company. However, I did like how they stressed student safety, and they offered to come in and do some presentations to classes. I think that's going to be very important. I also agree that I liked their the laser 3D imaging that they talked about. And also, I had noted that they talked highly about the mechanical systems as being a strong point. But I do feel that they might be too big for this type of a project.
Okay. I felt the same way. I felt like they came with too many people to the interview. It was too large of a group for me. But I was very impressed with the superintendent and Greg Williams, who was the pre-con manager. I think the superintendent, I liked him a lot, even though he was very quiet. He answered a couple of questions. It didn't answer your question correctly, Dennis, about costs and managing costs and all. I don't think he really understood the question. I was a little concerned because their phasing plan shows us using the library in phase 1, I think it was.
Yeah.
And whether or not we can really accommodate that. I questioned that a little bit. I did like the fact that they could put their equipment up in the ceiling and do the scanning. I thought that was very interesting. I've never used that on any project I've been on, so that was kind of interesting. Would love to be able to use that. I had a couple other The other thing that I thought, pricing wise, well, this isn't the one that shows the, yeah, it is. I'll get to the proposal we'll get to the pricing at the end, but overall, I felt like a little bit too big. I think they could have came with a little smaller group. The proposal wasn't as cohesive, is the only word I guess I could use. I didn't feel like it flowed.
You mean the phasing proposal?
Yeah, the phasing proposal and the actual proposal itself. I didn't like it as much as I liked the other ones. When it was easy to read, it wasn't as easy. It was easier than some, but I think that's it from the comments, really.
They weren't the ones that proposed the modules, that was another.
No,
Yeah,
that
they
was
didn't
was
propose
Sorry,
that.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
but they had a lot of stuff in there. Is that the one that had the pictures of the people and their other projects, the Wakefield projects? They had a lot of stuff there that probably they could have saved the time and taken.
There's a lot
out.
of duplicates of the same
Yeah.
matrix I saw throughout the proposal, but overall, I ranked them higher. They're ranked higher than I thought I would have, but I did like their super. I guess I could just say that. I did. I think it would be very
Doesn't
good.
make you a bad person.
No, I did. I liked them.
I
a
didn't
lot.
like, I didn't like him. I didn't rank him as the highest.
Not the
Not good.
highest, but I really felt like he could do the job, and I felt like he's already come off of one, and he was very quiet. That's the other thing that I
Yeah.
knew that
I had no, yeah.
wasn't the best, but he was very serious. So.
All right, Brad, you want to wrap that up?
Sure. So I think all three firms were qualified. If they weren't, right, we wouldn't have had them on the short list. So I thought Bond did a good job. I'm not as concerned about the size part of it because I don't believe that, we're going to have all 900 people here. I do think, I think they staffed it at around 11. I wouldn't expect to see that. So, I kind of look through that and say, who do we expect to see on the job? And, I think that, the superintendent, the project manager, some of their other people there, I thought were pretty strong. I thought Greg Williamson, their pre-con guy, was very strong. I thought overall their approach to pre-con was relatively sophisticated, which is different than slick, but I thought it was sophisticated. And I think, that probably stems from a lot of the work that they've done out there in the private sector. We have seen laser scanning before. It is a useful tool. They're not the only game in town doing that, but, it was good that they presented it. They talked about clash detection. So, from someone who expectation is, as the designer on the job to go and see someone who's going to be able to come in as the CM and, kind of marry up with us on the BIM side of the equation, I thought that they certainly handled that. And I thought, maybe even had a little bit edge over, some of the other guys. So I thought they did a pretty good job on that. I haven't worked with Bond, but I do know they have an excellent reputation out there. I thought that their phasing plan was pretty good. I don't think it was the best. One of the things, that they were trying to do, and they listened to us, they were one of two that I think really honed in on what we said at the walkthrough. And, in their phasing plan, they did a good job trying to accommodate the need not to have to go to modulars like Colantonio did. But I don't think it was perhaps as well thought as Rich's in terms of looking at how we would try and group. So they had the number of spaces there, as they were rolling through the different phases. But, the adjacencies and how some of that worked, either it wasn't clear to me or it just, wasn't happening. So either way, I thought they did a pretty good job on that. Good firm, they weren't my number one, but they're certainly a solid firm, very close.
Okay, any other comments about Bond before we move to Colantonio? How are we doing for time?
Good.
Okay.
All right, let's do the same thing for Colantonio.
Okay,
Joe?
I'll start with Colantonio, that I was very disappointed in the modular use in the phasing. I didn't care much for their approach. I didn't score them very well at all. Very few comments. Go ahead, Larry.
I was also concerned about the modular approach in that I didn't see a lot of breakout for not only the modules, but the plumbing, the heating, the electrical, all that ancillary stuff associated with the modules that would have to be done with that, as well as, we'll say, the cost of the covered walkway, things like that. There were also, in the cost section, there was nothing related to those costs in there. So I don't know where, if those costs were included in the proposal or not. So it was a very good presentation, but I just think there was too much unknowns there. Okay, Dennis.
Yeah, my take of Colin Tony is similar to what's already been said. One thing, I know the phasing can change as it gets molded in whoever we pick, but I looked at Colantonio's modular units thinking that might be an option because I did like the idea of separating the kids from the activity that goes on in the school, but they missed a lot of stuff by doing that because I felt that, first of all, I thought they missed that in the conceptual estimate. I didn't see anything for that, and I don't know if that would affect their overall price at the end. I saw all the detailed items that they're proposing, but I didn't see anything for the modular, so I don't know if that's going to skew their price compared to the others. In regards to the modulars, I thought that when you looked at where they were placing them, they were placing the construction zone right near the modulars, so I think it's going to be a distraction. One of the things I saw was in Phase 3, they have an access to the outside gym from the beginning of the school here, but it's during the months of February through August, so I mean you're going to be putting kids to go to the gym outside the building. They showed a walkway there. Phase 2 construction on the south wing was too far from the contractor's equipment area. Vehicles will be crossing in front of the entire school. I thought that was not a good thing to plan, but I know there's going to be some conflict, but I thought there was a lot more there than should be. I think the strongest person in their group that was a presentation was their construction manager. I was impressed with his presentation. The others were, I thought, a little bit weaker. When you look at their work, only one school is listed in the LEAD program, which is an issue, I thought, where other of the other two had many schools in the LEAD program. Right now they're working with just 5 to 7 active projects. I thought the assistant project manager was missing from the interview, which I thought was an important person to be there. The only school that I saw that was a CM project or that they presented was the Hopkinton Early Elementary School. And that was similar to what we have here, $33 million project, 82,000 square feet. But that was the only school that they are actively working at. Most of their work was on non-school projects such as DPW additions, waterwork buildings, non-occupied construction buildings or schools. So I thought that was a weak point on that company there. That's pretty much the gist of the major points of that, of Colantonio.
Great. Michelle?
Colantonio, I like the size of their firm. Their presentation was a little more informal, relaxed. Thought we got a lot of information out of them, but I was very concerned that the modulars were not preferred. I don't know where that came out, but I do know it was in the presentation before them that it was mentioned that we did not recommend modulars or anticipate modulars, and then they included them. So I don't know if that was in writing or if that was just from the walkthrough.
It was just at the
Okay.
walkthrough, I had brought it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that, and then we really couldn't identify that they had the full cost of the modulars into their proposal, even though they said they did. We questioned them on that during the question and answers, and I wasn't convinced that they really had them in there. So that was definitely a concern of mine.
So for me, for Colantonio, very similar to what many of you around the table had said, they're a nice small firm. And regarding the modules, again, I'm not sure that we need the modules, although I do like how they pointed out that not having to move preschool and kindergarten, just getting them in those modules and not having to disrupt those little ones was a positive. I found that to be a positive. I was a little concerned about the 14 and a half months, maybe a little unrealistic in terms of scheduling, whereas the other two presented 18 months, so that played a part into it. I've heard wonderful things about their superintendent. I just couldn't get a good read because he was very quiet. But I've heard wonderful things about him.
I like the fact that they only handle X amount of projects a year, the 6 to 7 projects a year in their company. I thought that was interesting, and it worked, you know, if we did award them the project, it would work in our favor, that they would be attentive to our needs and things like that. I thought the team gelled a lot better than I thought the bond team, because they seemed to work together. I couldn't tell if the bond team really worked together or not, like in the past. But I like the fact that they all played off each other. They answered the questions a lot more fluidly or easily. I'm not a big fan of the modules are great for, I think, like you said, for the pre-K and kindergarten. I thought that was great, but I didn't like the way they were positioned and having to walk outside. That did bother me a little bit. And I was concerned about the cost for the modules that really weren't identified in their proposal. I did like their proposal. It was okay. It wasn't highly ranked in my opinion, but overall, I still think the team, the superintendent and the PM make a good team, and I think they would really do a good job on this project as well for us, but I think that was really it, because I felt that they did a better job in their presentation than Bond did at that point. A moment when they came in, they did a much better job at the end. I thought it was just very smooth, and everybody got along, and it flowed, unlike the other ones were choppy.
I just wish they had worked on more school projects.
I did, I
Right.
would too.
If they did, I think that would have helped them.
Yeah.
So, for Colantonio, you know, like I said at the interview, you know, I like the guys, right? They're kind of the underdog there, you know, pleading the small firm angle, and we're only going to take on so much work, which maybe not, but in any event, you know, I like the guys. So you want them, you know, I kind of wanted them to show us something, but I got dragged down in the fact they were on a couple of things, right? First of all, the modular piece, right? While we did say, you know, we'd rather not have the modulars because we're all talking about the cost, right? Honestly, we'd prefer modulars, right? We would prefer them, and we could tell them where to locate them, right, if the cost was in there and everything else panned out. And I asked the question, are you sure that it's in there? But I could not find it, right? And it's a relatively big number.
Right.
And so, you know, to me, you know, while I appreciate it, you know, it was almost like you know, that's out there, and then it was like, well, is the money in there? But it's not, and so that was hard for me, and maybe, again, I'm misunderstanding it, but I looked pretty hard to try and find it. And maybe the other thing there, just in terms of the schedule, right, they were definitely, you know, outside the bandwidth, if you will, in terms of the other two proposals overall on construction schedule. It was very aggressive at 14 and a half months, at least, you know, that's what I took away from it. I don't know if, I can't really see that happening in 14 and a half months. But, you know, it's good to see that maybe they've got some angles there, but what that does is it negatively influences when you try and normalize the cost proposal, you know, in terms of their cost. You know, they end up, you know, on a 14 and a half month schedule looking like the low cost guy, right? But when you normalize it, you know, for what, you know, some people might say might be a more realistic schedule, or at least, you know, kind of in the bandwidth of everybody else, they become the high cost provider. And so, you know, as much as I was, you know, kind of rooting and pulling for those guys because, you know, you wanted them to, I didn't get, you know, some of that level of comfort that I was hoping to get. I also thought that, you know, as they continue to, you know, expand and get more experience there, they will become maybe a little bit more upfront on some of, at least in terms of their presentation, convincing people about the, you know, kind of the BIM angle, some of the, clash detection, those types of things that, we're starting to grow to expect now from, CMs coming on the job. And that Vaughn presented it, I've had experience with Rich and both of those guys do that work up front as part of, pre-con. So, I liked them. I just didn't see it there on the price and schedule side. So, they weren't my number one either.
Okay. Any other comments on Paul Antonio? Time check? 6:36.
Killing it.
Okay. How about WT Rich? Joe, can I ask you to start again?
Yes, I will. I was very comfortable with Rich's presentation. I liked their phasing, and I liked the way that their approach to the project. I thought it was a very smoother presentation than the other, and I liked that. So,
First, on the negative side, I didn't like their proposal layout sidebars with all of the quotations of people that to me meant nothing. So it might as well have been an endorsement from a sports figure or the New York Yankees type of a thing. It became confusing in that I didn't know whether some of those sidebars were relevant as far as something that I should look at or just another endorsement. That's on the bad side. On the good side, when I looked at their construction services plan, they had an overview of 12 bullets, and they went through and covered each one of the bullets. Nobody else did that. No one else said, these are the problems that we see, and this is what we're going to do on it. So I thought that was very good. I gave them very high marks for that. They also have the 3D-based MEP coordination, similar to what Bond proposes. So I gave them high ranks on it. They have, I think it's 68% of their projects were 149A oriented. So to me, I felt very comfortable with them. All yours.
On WT Rich, on the negative side, I was the phasing, looking at that a little bit closer, I thought that they were not aggressive enough in the first phase. If you notice on phase 4, or I'm sorry, phase 5, which is the August 2019 deadline, they put approximately 45% of the construction in that period. Now I know that 40,000 square feet is not undoable, or it is doable. But I thought that if there was any kind of something that comes up in any of the other phases, that this could cause a problem trying to get the school open on time. So I didn't like their phasing plan as much as some of the others. They have one positive thing is they have a good background with Pink and Dawn Whittier. They've worked with you people before, and that's always a good sign that they have a good relationship with people on other projects. They stated that the SummerSlam is the most important. I guess those are where most of the work is going to get done. I was a little nervous about the double time and the overtime and everything else like that. I mean, I know it's in their budget, but again, if they don't accomplish everything they propose to do in previous phases, then the SummerSlammer doesn't really benefit them in the end. I did like that they plan on buying a lot of the long lead items to reduce lead times for the subs, so that hopefully would work, and if that works, then I'm sure that their early phasing will fall into place. I did like that they're proposing to put 5 people or 5 staff during the 100% of time during the construction. Their estimator said they were always on budget, and one of the key things I heard several times and read in there that they've never missed a school opening deadline. To me, that's a key thing for any school project. They have 12 active CM school projects. They were one of the firm with the most school projects active in past. I thought they ranked highly there. And they also got the highest score from DCAM of the three at 97 out of 100. They also stated that they have deep experience in completing phased, occupied school renovation projects. And as far as lead, I thought they were excellent. The last 7 projects completed, they achieved 7 certifications, 1 platinum, 3 gold, and 3 silver, which is awesome, I thought, and that's what we want to see on our project here. And in their list of projects, of the 7 projects that they have active in progress, I get this backwards here, 13 listed as 7 of them are school projects, so I know that they're very active with their school projects, so I ranked them as one of the high ones.
Michelle?
I thought they had a solid presentation. I really liked their estimator. It was the only presentation that I really got a really good feel that he was involved and knew what he was doing and had a really good handle on our project. I liked the superintendent. He seemed easy to work with. I thought he really was engaged with the other members in the presentation. And they had good experience with CM projects.
I share similar. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were
Yeah,
talking.
I actually had written down the same thing about their estimator seemed to get very involved in the answering the questions and in the interview process. I really liked the super. As you know, I'm in the people business, and I felt I really connected with their super. I also have a professional relationship with their project manager, I believe it is, and I work very well with him. They just seemed...
You have a personal relationship with the project?
Yeah, personal, correct. Well, he stated in the interview that his kids come to Pine Grove, so I know the family. I just felt like they were very passionate about the work that they do. I liked that the superintendent stressed the importance of safety on the job. He mentioned that several times. And I also liked that he said that I would be invited to the foreman's meetings weekly, and no one else mentioned that. And I think that that's important,
It is.
that I be part of
Right.
it.
That is actually going to be part of it no matter what.
Right.
I like that, yeah.
As long as I don't have to travel far. And he said, nope, right out in the
Trailer.
trailer. And I also like the fact, they just did the West Parish School, and they came in under budget, I think, was it by $1 million? I think that's key.
That's awesome.
I liked them a lot.
Okay. I liked their proposal. I thought it flowed really well, and he hit all the key points that we asked him to. And he took all the information from the walkthrough and put it into his proposal. And I thought it was a great proposal. It was easier to read. I followed it. I thought it was great. The only downside about the whole team is I don't think these two have worked together. I think, because Jack's so new to the company, but
He's been there a year.
he's been there a year. But I liked his personality. He's very personable.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he's a parent, the senior project manager, which is helpful because he is going to be concerned about safety and cleanliness and disruptive, being loud noises and when to do it, when not to do it. I like that fact. Sonny's always great. I can attest that they have hit a date on a project that we're on, and they made their phase 1 date without any problems. Overall, I'm comfortable with them. They were very comfortable. I thought the presentation went really well. I thought they answered the questions that we asked and answered them the way I wanted to hear them. And overall, I think they would do a great job for us.
With respect to Rich, I have worked with them. They have done a good job with us. We did do the West Parish job with them. I thought they had a good presentation. I thought they had a good proposal that was understandable for me. I was kind of able to follow everything there. I'm a little bit different than you, Dennis, maybe on the phasing plan. I thought the phasing plan was pretty good. I'm not so worried about the number of square feet at the end because I think the way that they approached that is they were picking off a lot of the kind of heavier coordination items for particular the mechanical runs, in the corridors and doing all of that associated rooftop work with those individual phases. So that doesn't mean that there's not some work there, but there certainly is. But I think a lot of the hard work they will have been picking up in some of those individual phases. And then, if I remember correctly, the gym was also in the last phase, which is a big space, and that we don't have much work going on in that. I did like the idea that they had sectioned off the gymnasium. We had talked a little bit about that in the walkthrough.
About that, yeah.
Because I think it does afford the opportunity for the groupings of the classroom, in terms of the grade structure and keeping that somewhat cohesive. And I think Bond was trying to do that. They didn't use that, but maybe that would have worked too. So everything that everybody else has said there, give you just we've only worked on them with one job in Gloucester. It went very well. They spent a lot of time up front, working to make sure that everything was, kind of done appropriately, correctly before bid day. And then, they went out of their way to try and be accommodating for the owner there. Different site, right? That was not an occupied phasing. But, we're pretty much closed out on that job, and we opened it this fall. I mean, I think we have 6 or 7 items left on the punch list, which, from my end, you don't see very often. So I had ranked them number 1. It was, fairly close between, them and Bond. Part of it's because maybe I've had that working experience with them. They do have a lot of experience, okay, in 149A. They're an old line company. Walter's still around. So, like I said, I don't really have a problem with large, companies, like it was mentioned a little bit with Bond Brothers, but, if the fit for you guys is that, you like that, kind of smaller, mid-size, family-owned type situation, that's their wheelhouse, right? That's what they are. And, they have a lot of experience in renovation, and then they've done, they're doing a big job right now in Cambridge, so they certainly have the capacity. They do the BIM thing. They do the coordination pretty well. So, they're a solid firm.
Could I add one more comment?
Yes, ma'am.
I had noted that their super said that he actually, even though he's only been with this company for a year, he specializes in phased occupied construction, so I thought that was really important.
Yeah, and Chris showed up at the community meeting too.
Yes, that's right.
He's one of the only one firms that showed up.
Yeah, that's got to kind of count for something, right?
Yes.
To speed things up a bit, we want to go to the rankings.
If you all are ready to do that, then
Anybody not ready?
do that. I just want to say one thing about this memorandum, which I distributed, which described how we're doing this, and does a very kind of quick look at the cost proposals. So, as I said in this memo, there is, and this is, I'm saying Pink and Company, I'm not speaking for Doran Whittier, they may look at this differently. We tend to look first at 2 things. So one is the fixed fees, because those are not negotiable. And so we did a comparison of those, and although they're relatively close together, W.T. Rich had the lowest of the fixed fees, Bond was second, and Colantonio had the highest number. Then I also looked, as Brad mentioned, because we asked them to bring their thinking about phasing, and they brought very different approaches, the timelines were different, but it is possible to extrapolate a monthly cost, not including the fixed fee. So I essentially created their average cost based on their own internal proposal, and then I normalized it for the average of the time. So this analysis assumed that the first phase is 4 months, which we know because May 9th is a fixed date. That the second phase of pre-construction, the average is 10 months, and the construction average was 17 and a half months. So when you extrapolate their proposals for staffing along those lines, which is not a perfect way to do it, it's just a kind of a simple way to do it that is relatively easy to explain. The lowest overall price for that is Bond, the second is W.T. Rich, and the third is Colantonio. These numbers are different in the sense that they do get negotiated, unlike the fixed numbers. So it's more, gives you more of a sense of how they're staffing the job, how many people and what rates they're staffing the job at, than it is necessarily a commentary on fixed fees. But it is, I think, a useful comparison to me, because the numbers, as they related to the phasing, looked kind of wildly different. And you can see from this that actually the difference between the low and the high is what, less than $200,000, maybe to call it $200,000. So the spread, when you normalize it, is actually relatively small. So I just wanted to put that in about the numbers. Does anybody else want to make any other comments on the cost proposals? I will say that all the cost proposals and all the responses are all public. We encourage the CMs, whether they were selected or not selected, to come and look at their competitors' work, because we think that that actually helps them be more competitive the next time around. And I think the fact that we're having this conversation in a way that they can hear your thoughts is also helpful. And if that sounds good, then I think we can go ahead and score them and see, have everybody give us their rankings. Everybody can record them, but we'll keep the record copy up here.
Right,
Okay?
right.
Just one thing, there was like a glitch in this, so,
There was a math.
in a math in this, so we just
Yeah.
need to make sure that everybody gets that
We
score
fixed
right.
it, but the ones that we emailed out, then they weren't fixed.
Well, what I'm not concerned so much as the number as the ranking, so that, you know, my number one is a clear number one, my number two is nowhere near, and number three was down the bottom of the list.
Okay.
And
Helpful to know
I
that.
think that it doesn't matter whether we're scoring from, 90 points or a top score of 70 points. That is not relevant.
Okay. So Jody
My number
Munster?
one was W.T. Rich, and my number two was Bond.
Larry?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
go by the names on here.
Okay.
My number one pick was W.T. Rich as well. Bond was a close second, and Colantonio was a fairly close third.
Larry?
I had Rich as number one, Bond as number two, Colantonio number three.
Christine?
Rich number one, Bond number two, and Colantonio number three.
Michelle?
Okay, I'm gonna be a little different here. I have Rich as number one,
Okay.
but I had Colantonio as number two and Bond as number three.
Andrea?
I have W.T. Rich as number one, and to a close second is Bond, and then Colantonio.
Brad?
Rich, Bond, Colantonio.
Okay, well, I would say that we have a decision.
That was
Yeah.
easy.
Did
Yes.
anybody else get the same record I did?
Yeah.
So-
Yes.
And I will say that I did a reference today, because I knew that one of the two would probably be the top, and I did call the town of Norton, talked to their building chairman, school building committee chairman, and he had nothing but praise for W.T. Rich. He said they were on time, but they were actually under budget, and he said they work well with you people as well, so I was satisfied with that.
Thank you for doing that. So, I think that everybody probably needs the seventh inning stretch before we start the building committee meeting. Is there anything else anybody wants to say on the
We do have to
record?
take a formal vote.
Oh, okay. So, do
And
you
I'll
want to frame
call
it?
for a motion.
I'll make a motion for accepting Rich as the CM.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments from any voting member?
I just wanted to also say that I did look at the financial reports for the three firms, and I didn't find anything that was out of line.
That's right. Larry reviewed on behalf of the committee the financial statements that were included in the RFQ. So, Thank you.
Okay, for the voting member, yes, go
Nope,
ahead.
I was waiting for you to,
For the voting members on the committee, all those in favor of accepting Rich as the CM at risk, say aye.
I,
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Sorry, we're on the wrong side of the table.
Yeah,
no, it's really
No, there
going
won't be any
on.
Take a motion to
there won't be any
adjourn.
presentations.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Subcommittee.
Do I second it?
yes. Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn the subcommittee meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.